This would be like Gandalf giving the Palantir back to the hobbits and
That's
saying, like,
right. Yep.
you know what? I know you've been dealing with this issue. Here, let me give it back to you so you can overcome it. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us as we get into episode 6 of The Rings of Power, Udun. And as I mentioned in my Insta review, I think Udun is that space essentially in front of Ordruin and behind the Black Gate. That's kind of the spot. It's the staging grounds for Sauron and his armies.
That is correct. And anyone that plays Lord of the Rings online knows that it's a major questing area following the fall of the Black Gate.
Well, that's good to know.
Hey, look, it's equally as interesting as many of the plot points in this episode.
It's far more interesting. I'd rather hear about your quests on Lord of the Rings Online than I would about the Rings of Power at this point. However, speaking of questing, the Númenóreans are on a quest in this episode, and we get essentially one full episode of one storyline, which, for the complete lack of a better term, is a breath of fresh air but fresh air being like less fetid than before. That's really all that.
Right.
But yeah, so before we jump into that, I just want to remind everybody to like and subscribe, hit the buttons below, blah, blah, blah. Everybody says it. So I'd just appreciate it. It's nice to get more folks commenting and hearing our thoughts and views. And especially when you do get that, you also get our podcast, The Window on the West, where we're walking through the Silmarillion right now. We're reading through it. It's a little bit slower right now because of the Rings of Power, but we're enjoying it. And it's nice to get into what Tolkien actually wrote. Not everything that's completely made up in these stories.
Not whatever this is.
Not whatever this is. Yeah. Right. So windowonthewest.com, you can get there. You can have links to subscribe there, or you can find it in any podcast app and anywhere online. And then if you really want to get involved, we have a Patron platform at theonering.com/patron, where you can get Discord access to our private servers, where you can get message board access, and our soon to come extended edition of the podcast. That's $4 a month. First month is free. So hope to see you there. We're getting some nice chats. We're going to go over some of the things that some of the folks were talking about today for this episode last night. All right, so let's just go to the beginning. Again, we get an episode that's an hour and 10 minutes long, which is not surprising anymore. They have such long scenes that we will review here. But yeah, we can start at the very beginning where it's Adar giving the rah-rah speech to his troops.
So what I took away from this was that, he gives a speech to the orcs where he talks about casting off shackles, and they're not going to, he says, quote, not as unnamed slaves in faraway lands, but as brothers. And then he adds brothers and sisters because, he's fully intersectional in his in his orc leadership. But so he's kind of talking to them like they're slaves. It almost felt like a bad ripoff of an Amistad speech or something.
Yeah, right. And I guess if I had to say, they're referring to being slaves of Morgoth back in the day, I guess, because that's the only time that we know they were slaves. Nobody else held them enslaved ever anywhere else in the histories of Middle. Of course, they're making stuff up. Like, who knows? Maybe the Harfoots at some point had some minor orcs that were enslaved.
It would be appropriate to the Harfoots. So
they're no. The orcs are the Harfoots that they left behind. They're the ones that eventually were captured. Yeah, okay.
My favorite part is that if you go to the X-ray version on Amazon during this speech, he talks about brotherhood, and immediately the X-ray version, because I heard that I'm like, brotherhood, like we're going to be brothers and sisters. Apparently someone has said they've found at least one female orc in this episode. I wasn't looking, so because I don't care. But they immediately, as soon as he mentions brotherhood, I'm thinking in my head, this does not sound like orcs. Orcs do not form brotherhoods. They might form tribes, but they even tear each other apart within their tribes.
They're just making them into a family, right? He's the father. They're all brothers. They're his children.
Right. We're supposed to think that feel sorry for orcs a little bit. But what made me laugh was immediately the X-ray version, on the X-ray notes on the left-hand side of the screen, pops up and it says, notions, this is directly from Amazon, notions like brotherhood are unusual among orcs, who, when left to their own devices, often hate even their own kind. Sherlock. Like Amazon itself is throwing shade on its own dialogue.
That's so great.
It's hilarious.
Oh, man. But these are special orcs with a nice daddy.
Well,
they're just looking for a home, man. I mean, come on.
Right.
I know. Yeah. They could head to Los Angeles, and there are plenty of tents available to them under these freeway overpasses.
My
drive some people
dwelling.
out. Yeah. So anyway, so they go through this scene, and they end up marching up. The 75 orcs, or however, so what it looked like to me, not very many, but they march up to the empty tower.
All right. So I just want to show you guys this scene because it highlights something that's going to be sort of endemic throughout this episode, which is lack of realism. So we do have a single story.
Just this episode?
Okay. But specifically, I mean, everything has been leading up to this episode, right? We've got all these storylines. They all merge. We've had 5 previous episodes, and almost all of them. Sorry, we don't have 2 of them aren't merged yet, which is the Elrond dwarf storyline and the dirty little sociopath storyline. But besides those, everything else is merging in this storyline, and it culminates in a battle. Like this is sort of epic writing 101. Culminate in a battle, and then. But the way they do it throughout this episode is plagued from start to finish with simply terrible writing. And so here we go. Right number 1, your orc army about to siege a tower. You're expecting there to be resistance. So what do? You clearly walk up. You don't send scouts. You don't check it out. You just walk up with your commander in the front. So let's watch this. Let's watch this beauty. So here they are. They're walking up. They're just walking. They're not looking up like Adar in front. He's just like walking up to the front door. Don't look up.
He's showing he's going to take the hit for them. He's at the phalanx.
Yep. Well, but he's not even attacking it. He's just like I walk home when I'm
the door's open.
Open the door,
honey.
If there had been one guy there, he would have taken Adar's head off.
It just plagued, and I thought for sure everybody was going to be hiding in here, and then they'd all pop out. But it turns out only one person was hiding. That was Arondir. Only one, because all you need is one. Because we know that the strength of the elves comes from the light of the Silmarils, and the strength of the tower comes from that one piece of rope holding up the entire thing. The entire tower is held up.
I'm sorry. I'm wondering what they're all worried about. They're worried about this orc army coming to get them. That seems like a very defendable position. If they all have to come across that one narrow bridge.
Yep.
Like you just hit them there, right?
No, but you don't understand, Dan. They gave up this tower so that they could kill some of the orcs, and then they could defend the least defensible village in the history of Middle-earth.
Yeah, right. So let's show the tower going down because
Rube Goldberg was the builder of this tower, apparently.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So there you go.
It's all held together by one rope.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, and let's watch it.
Here it comes, one rope. Everything's coming apart. I love that. Like this would make me really concerned about the forge that they're building in Region, right? Because if you don't have a strong enough rope, clearly that tower is going to come down. There it is.
There it goes.
Impressive. Yeah. So what is amazing about this whole tower scene is that clearly the villagers had a way to get out from day one. They didn't ever have to worry about food because it was easy enough to, in the middle of the night, somehow make it down the valley, scale down the cliffs. I don't know how they got there, but they got down to the bottom of where this reservoir is and look up and all start cheering because they got the orcs. I don't know how they got there. It's the magic of Insta travel. And there it is.
And they're not really hiding. They're like lit lanterns, lit torches. It's like, how do the orcs march up to the tower and not look down to the left and go, hey, there's only over there.
Yeah, there's only one way in. It's not like they took the back door. Right? Yeah. That's the whole anyway. So like you said, Michael, it's rife with issues, and that's only
you can call it nitpicking if you want, but when it's so obvious, I mean, I really wanted from the beginning of this show, I really wanted it to immerse me in Middle-earth, even if it's telling a different story, even if it isn't up to Tolkien's snuff. I just wanted it to immerse me, to be immersive, and it just doesn't. It fails and fails and fails and fails in that. But anyway, so we're about to get a whole episode of a battle, and so it starts with that, and they kill a whole bunch of orcs, and then it's made clear that they have the day, so the day magically comes, and so the orcs aren't going to attack during the day, apparently, the remnants, whoever the remnants are. And of course, nobody is fooled by this, that we all know Adar has survived because he's a big bad guy, so of course he's going to survive. So then they prepare. We have a preparation scene where they prepare. Oh no, we go back to Numenor.
No, we go back to Numenor, where he's feeding the 5 horses. That turns into about 175 later in the episode. What I love about this scene, I mean, first of all, Deanna, I think there are germ issues, which you brought up at one point.
Clearly, Isildur and the Numenorians have not discovered germ theory yet. Where you take a bite and you give the horse something to bite, and then you bite right where the horse bit. That's a little much for me. This whole episode kind of grossed me out. There's different things like that were really gross and like scoopy.
Yeah, the blood into the mouth and the eyes.
Eating after a horse is one of them. Yeah. That's too much saliva exchange for me.
Yeah. So, but maybe the germ theory, he had it gave him enough guts to go up and talk to Galadriel, where she tells him, I think, the best quote of the entire episode, where she schools him on humility.
Yes.
We got to cue this up and find it.
She's the expert.
All right. So she's about to say, "Don't be." And then she gives the line, "Humility has saved entire kingdoms that the proud have all but led to ruin."
Yeah. So wait, read that again, Mike. What was that line that she says?
The line is explicitly, "Humility has saved entire kingdoms that the proud have all but led to ruin." So here we go.
Wait. But before we do, let's think of an example. What humility? Because it's a truism that has to be based in some sort of historical fact, right? So, Michael, what humility has saved an entire kingdom? In Middle Earth, right? We have to limit it to that. Right. Gondolin? No. Doriath? Moria?
No.
Angband? Thangorodrim. What else? Linden? The Grey Havens?
Nope.
No. Hobbiton?
No,
hasn't happened yet. All right, well, so let's hear her say it, because
it's so bad. Yeah, I mean, you're pointing out a great point. I mean, make a great point, which is, look, it has to be true. First of all, it can't just sound pithy.
Yeah.
And it isn't. She doesn't have any examples. And the second thing is, she's clearly just lecturing him about being humble. It's okay to be humble. From Galadriel. Galadriel is lecturing him on humility. This is beyond rich. I don't know if I think that there might be one writer who's just a troll and puts in like certain lines just to mess with us, because he knows how ridiculous it is. So maybe I'm going to have it. This will be my disgruntled writer theory. There's one disgruntled Amazon writer that puts jokes in for us. So anyway, here we go.
Despise not the labor which humbles the heart. Humility has saved entire kingdoms that the proud have all but led to ruin.
Humility has saved entire kingdoms that the proud have all but led to ruin. Let's ruminate on that. You know what it is? It's sort of like they must have had it's like a director who goes in and creates shots for a film before they have a plot. They've created all these lines for a script before they have a plot, right? So they have to feel like they have to put in these sayings or these things that these writers wrote in college that they're like, this was great back then. We got to fit this in somehow. Right. That's about the strength of their writing. It never follows any of these lines.
And it does. And look, I don't envy their job, right? Because if you were an Amazon writer, you're following one of the greatest prose fiction writers in the history of our civilization. And so when you dig into Tolkien's prose, it's really hard to follow that. But this, like you said, Jonathan, is simply, a community college attempt at it. It is. And that's what's so sad.
I went to community college and I can do better than this. For a couple
I don't think it's a bad line, but it's just how they try to shoehorn it into her character saying it, and how they haven't set it up at all, and how she's not humble.
Well, exactly.
And it's just
it's not a bad about line, it. As far as it goes. No. I mean, it's an untruth, right? What she's saying is like there's no reason for us to believe this because they haven't proven it to be true anywhere else in the story. So yeah, it sounds fine, but if they can't show us that this is actually a truism by what's happened so far, or who this character is, that she has won people over. She swayed Numenor because of her humility. That never happened. So that would, if she would have done that, then I would believe it. But yeah, you're right. It's like constructively, it's not bad, but But when you deconstruct what it means and where it's coming from, it's
almost like the writers all got together and they're like, okay, let's brainstorm some ideas. What's Tolkien? Humility, good triumphing over evil. And they have all these big themes up on the whiteboard, and then they go like, okay, write a quote for that one, write a quote for that one, and then we'll cram this one into episode 6. We'll put this one in episode 4. Like,
yeah. I have no doubt that there's something like that has occurred. And what you're right about is that obviously humility is a powerful theme in Tolkien, and obviously what she's trying to say here is humility is no bad thing, and so don't be worried about doing humble work. So that what she's trying to get at is a true statement. The statement she actually makes to try to get at that is what Jonathan and I are pointing out is actually untrue. Humility doesn't save entire kingdoms of the proud of nearly rich, or at least doesn't in Middle Earth. We have no examples of it. We have examples of her interacting twice with kingdoms, one with the kingdom of Lindon and one with the kingdom of Númenor, and she's the opposite of that. Yeah. So again, my disgruntled writer theory. My theory is they're thinking like I'll go with Dan's theory here too. You know, we have to put in this line about humility. Who should say this line? And the one disgruntled writer is like, Galadriel. It would be such a girl power moment.
It would be more believable if it came from Durin.
Yes, anyone. Literally anyone in this show, including Sauron, I mean Halbrand, could say this line and make it more believable than this character. Yeah. So anyway.
All right. Mm-hmm. So moving on from Isildur, we get to Elendil, where we learn the tragic news that after he watches the sunrise over the ocean and is amazed by it, apparently, considering he's been at sea for a while, many years of his entire life. Anyway, I don't want to belabor that point. But okay. I love the point that his wife died, because anytime anything happens with the sea, all we can say is the sea is always right. And so she died, and it was meant to be. I guess even that's what they're saying.
Okay, but now I want to point out something here, because we get a map version in this case where Muriel's looking at the map and she's asking not Isildur, she's asking Elendil how long it's going to take, and apparently they've just arrived at the coast. So he says, and you guys have to bear with me on this, because this is like this is feeding my disgruntled writer theory, because they didn't have to tell us how much time it would have taken. So they've mucked with all the timelines. So they didn't have to tell us how much time it would have taken. It's going to take the Númenóreans to arrive at random tower, which just happens to be the tower which a major plot point is happening at, and they have no reason to go
and it's
there.
On the map.
Right.
I love that.
Exactly. So this random tower is going to be there, and they're going to go there, and it just so happens to be the tower that less likable Legolas and Single Mother are occupying. And so we got that plot line. So it's gonna merge, right? So that's fine. Here we are told explicitly that it's going to take a full day to sail up the river, and another full day to go to the tower. Now, remember, we've just seen the rising of the sun, matched by the rising of the sun following the humans' short-lived victory over the orcs at the tower. So we're meant to be thinking, you're telling us cinematically this is the same day. So now we know it's going to take 2 full days for the Númenóreans to arrive in that tower. And the reason I keep belaboring that point is because they didn't have to put it in, but they explicitly told us it's going to be 2 days. And then literally 1 day later, the Númenóreans arrive at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
So they're just destroying.
Well, and not to mention, like the timeline, right? The timeline. Let's if we take a step back and people ask, well, why are you so worried about the timeline? Let's not forget they all saw the meteor at the same time. Yes. We have a single point in time where they all saw, unless somehow that meteor was super slow and somebody saw it a month later. But for the amount of time that it would take for that tower to be built that we saw, the forge, right? But also to cross the sea. I mean, this is an overnight journey for them across the sea, apparently, right?
Yes.
We're talking at least, what do we say, at least 1,000 miles or something like that, or 500 miles.
Right.
That is not a short amount of time. Right, we're talking like days, at the very least, to go that distance.
That's right. But my other problem here, Jonathan, is that cinematically, we only know what you show us cinematically. So someone could say, well, these are all, sure, we showed them all at the same time, but then our timelines diverged and we got all kinds of different things happening because clearly there's like 6 months of building by the dwarves on the forge that, blah, 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 which nothing makes sense in that regard. But here, so they didn't literally leave at the same time, but when you cinematically show me the rising of the dawn for the villagers,
yes, right,
and then you show me the rising of the dawn as the Númenóreans arrive in Middle Earth, you are telling me cinematically that we're now in the same timeline, especially because these whole plot lines are merging right now.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, you tell me cinematically something, regardless of whatever, Tolkien famously spent a ton of time working out all kinds of details with regard to chronology on his storyline. He thought it very important. It turns out it is important for immersion. They're almost deliberately destroying that. I just don't understand it. But
I mean, it's either incredibly stupid or it's on purpose. And I guess what is the phrase? Don't describe
to malice what can be explained by stupidity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they are just following Einstein, and there's more gravity in certain parts of Middle Earth.
So time goes slow.
So time is relative.
That's right.
So maybe the time just goes slower where they are.
Dan, I'm glad you're bringing up these incredibly important.
I mean, it's science.
Wait, and we are not anti-science here, especially not in Middle Earth.
Okay.
So here we go. This is the scene. Okay, so there was one thing that the scene reminded me of, and it's a cinematic scene from years past. An incredible movie where they're clearly taking direction from, and that movie features Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Chevy Chase as the Three Amigos when they are preparing the town of Santa Poco for the arrival of El Guapo, and he asks them, "What can you do well?" And they're like, and they're like, "We can sew." And I feel like this scene is like these horrible villagers who don't have any skills at all, except for putting a head on a pike, coming together and figuring out what can we do, but they don't even explain what they can do. There's no lead. The Three Amigos has more of a plan than these guys ever did, other than dropping a cart filled with fire behind them.
Also look at this just as a quick point on that. Like, who puts this thing together on the left side of the screen here? like what is this? Like, you to build on your point, Jonathan. Clearly, they have so little talent they can't even make a barricade. I mean, or anything that looks like a barricade. Someone just, I don't. This is a physically improbable concoction of wood here. But anyway, so they're preparing. But before they prepare, I did actually skip something I wanted to point out, which is this. This is cool. Beginning of the scene, here's Arondir, and he is working at the forge. And what is he doing? He is beating on the sword. Okay. So he's taking a hammer and he hits the sword hilt with the hammer a bunch of times, and then the hammer breaks. And his claim is, after 30 seconds of trying to break it with the hammer. And I would remind you, he seems to be standing at a forge. So he isn't even using fire. And his conclusion is, it can't be broken. This is what kind of idiot elf? Okay, I understand the point is we're supposed to believe that it can't be broken. This is like unbreakable. This is like a ring of power thing, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But the way they try to show us that it can't be broken is one guy hitting it with the hammer a bunch of times.
But they were so successful with the chains.
Oh my gosh.
When they had to escape, you stack the chains on top of each other and you use a pickaxe and that breaks chains. It's amazing. His ability to understand the laws of metallurgy needs to be he needs to be introduced to the dwarves a little bit more. It's just, he's
even real hobbits knew better. Like Frodo was like,
Well, let's not forget he's incapable of knowing what a hilt feels like when it's wrapped up in a cloth too.
That's true.
Later in the episode. Yeah. So they prepare the whole. Boy, we're only 13 minutes into. We got to get a move on, guys. So they prepare the whole town, and the town. Okay. So Dan, this was your favorite part.
Yeah, they put one of my favorite quotes in all of Lord of the Rings into Bronwyn's mouth.
My heart hurts.
After the episode where she wants to quit and give up. She says it's hopeless. What hope is there against an army like whatever she says in the last episode? And now she's like leading like the French resistance against Nazi Germany. Like she's ready to like go down fighting and set up all these traps and so she says like, you know, basically she's telling Theo that there's truth and high beauty forever beyond the reach of evil. So like basically her character now is like, we'll die even if we have to because evil can't win. And like it can never take down truth and beauty. We have to die. The last scene that I saw her in was like literally like we have to give up.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, except that this is injection. And here's the, you know, last episode we were treated to the idea with the DLSs that the
Harfy.
Sure.
Yeah. Just for those who haven't seen.
I know. Videos. Fine. The fake hobbits that there's that they're the poem that Gandalf thousands of years later is going to speak about Aragorn came from female Frodo in this episode, in that last episode, or female Sam, sorry, singing all those who wander are not lost. Okay, so that's what we're supposed to believe. And now we're supposed to believe, though, I mean, that's one thing. That's, first of all, unlikely. And it's trying to tell us, oh, no, Gandalf's not that great. He just learned everything great from the hobbits, from the fake hobbits. Yeah, from fake Sam. So that's bad enough. But then in this episode, Theo asks Bronwyn to tell him what she always used to tell him, you know, when he was scared and dark at night. And what she rattles off is almost word for word what Sam, like you were saying, Dan, what Sam says when he's in Mordor looking up at the star. Like, that's totally different. She's rattling off almost word for word. In the end, the shadow is only a small and passing thing, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. It is a wonderful line. It is beautiful. The idea that thousands of years before, this one woman... so all the good lines from Lord of the Rings really came from women in Rings of Power. That's what we're supposed to believe.
Yeah, right. And it shows like how the writers completely disrespect their audience. They like, I mean, it goes back to how they brought on the super fans who, by the way, I can't remember who did it. Maybe it's Fuel the Babyface. He put a video up that showed like how many of these super fans actually ended up doing any videos about the Rings of Power at all. None of them have, those super fans who's like, But it goes back to like they don't understand fans. They didn't believe that people would actually remember that line from The Lord of the Rings. Like I seriously believe that they're just stupid. They have no clue. But yeah, it's dirty in her mouth. It's unacceptable. It is gross. It cheapens it so much, and I despise.
Should we play it for the audience?
Sure, go ahead.
All right.
Would you say it to me now?
Aw, mommy.
In the end, this shadow is but a small and passing thing. There is light and high beauty, forever beyond its reach. Find the light.
And sometimes you have to touch the darkness to find the light.
No, Dan, bringing it down a notch further. Didn't think it was possible.
All right.
So really, all of Tolkien's good lines he got from the Rings of Power.
Well, it did happen
many years in the past, right?
All right.
Okay.
So we get through
but back to people that aren't Tolkien, and here's a great line. She asks him. I just had this reaction automatically, especially with the light on his perfect fade. She asks him, this is Bronwyn asking.
Who does your hair?
Arondir. No, she asks, Are you ready? He asks her, are you ready? And she says, no, are you? And then he turns slowly and the light shines upon his perfect fade. And I immediately thought in my head, like, dang, girl, don't you see this perfect fade? Of course I'm ready. I've been ready since I left the barber this morning because that's the only way it would look this way.
Oh.
But then they
have a moment.
They have a moment. Kiss. And they kiss.
The love is real. The love of trees is real.
Oh yeah, and Arondir tells her this elven tradition about planting seeds, which is actually a kind of a nice idea for an elven tradition before battle. I actually liked that. But we had Adar do the same tradition at the beginning of this, so the bad guy ruined it for me first. Yeah.
So here's the whole battle scene, right? And so I think, I mean, we can go. There's a ton of bad fighting in here.
That's terrible. But we have to say this, Jonathan. Look, the orcs, having learned their lesson from the tower, walk slowly up to the village, just like they walked slowly up to the tower.
How did they know they were at the village? Did they see them down below, like you said, Dan, with their lanterns and torches? Like,
right.
Okay, and first of all,
they just took a guess and they were right. Maybe
I don't know how much we need to address this. So let's just talk about the scene in whole. Number one, if you've escaped the one place that you were confined at without food, why would you go back to your city and try and defend it when you could simply, especially Arondir, when you could take the Sword Hilt, perhaps go all the way to Linden and take it to Gil-galad and say, look what I found. This is the evil that we've been looking for. But no, he decides to stick around. He could have taken Bronwyn and Theo with him. That's not a problem. I'm sure they'd be fine. They're strong female warriors.
They have a whole day, by the way. They know the orcs aren't going to attack. They
exactly.
For an entire
and so
day.
Instead, they're sewing costumes to all look like. No, wait, wrong movie. Instead, they're. So it makes no sense. And then number two. So number one, bad idea, staying in the city. Number two. If you're incapable of fighting, go inside the one enclosed space that will never burn down, number one, will never be assaulted, and you just stay in the tavern because you're going to be safe in there, and let us all do the fighting. They could have all perhaps fled further away. That might have been a slightly better, in fact, a whole lot better. So this points out a couple things. One, their plans are like, if this is Arondir making the plans or if it's Bronwyn making the plans, horrible plan to begin with. Number two, when the fighting commences, they don't recognize that all these orcs are actually their former kinsmen. That's incredible because we get to the end of the scene when Arondir sees red blood and is like, oh no, look, we've killed all of our own. The two unbelievable ways they approach us. I don't know. This whole scene, again, like it's nice to actually have a battle that moves things forward, but the execution is so poor and the decision making is so bad and unbelievable that if you were in this situation, you would never do that. That was my take on it.
Yeah, they need to fire their choreographer. There was the scene. This battle commences with a full 20-second scene of Bronwyn killing an orc and then pushing a flaming cart back into the other orcs. Yeah. And literally for 20 seconds, there's all this battle happening, and not a single orc even reacts. They're just meandering about. And then you have this, like you pointed out, they don't notice that the men. There's no clue. This is a callback to the to two scenes from Lord of the Rings. Anyway, just like there's like 6 or 7 callbacks in this episode to direct callbacks to Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson films. And this one was, you got them running through the door, and Arondir is trying to shoot the guy. This is Helm's Deep again. Helm's Deep, yeah, exactly. Trying to shoot the orc with the barrel that blows up. In this case, it's the battering ram.
Yeah,
and he succeeds temporarily, and then they think they've won the battle, and then they notice that the people are actually men.
But we forgot the new battle between Lurtz and Aragorn, or oversized orc and undersized.
That happens afterwards.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, so it happens now. So now they notice that there were actual men, and then they're like, "Oh, this is terrible. There were men," and then they start getting hit by arrows. So the orcs clearly kept a force outside the village, and they start peppering with arrows, and that's when the fighting begins in earnest.
Yeah, so and the scene goes on forever.
Yes, this Lurtz fight. By the way, let me ask you something. The biggest and strongest orc that we've ever seen, why doesn't he have a weapon? With a weapon, Arondir would be dead in 3 seconds. He would have a weapon. Like he was up against a rock. It's bad.
Because every battle where somebody has to survive is just a tossing against the wall. And it's not like he's bashing his head over and over again into the ground. He's just like, I'm going to throw him against this breakable wooden wagon.
And here's the part that Dan loved.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting to me is that this is taking place during a battle. You got to assume there's other orcs, other people. Like, how do they have this much time for like this one-on-one fight? It goes on forever. Like, there you have like the eyeball goop dripping down. It just goes way too long.
And of course, the climax of this is he can't save himself. He is saved by Bronwyn, of course.
Number 3,
strong female healer warrior person. Yeah. So again, she saves him. Has he saved himself once at all? I guess you could say the tower is the one place where he did one thing.
Yeah, he saved himself a few times, whatever. And then they
get hit by arrows. They all run to the tavern. I was so hoping that Bronwyn was gonna kick the bucket, add a little bit of stakes into the show. I knew it wasn't gonna happen, but she got hit by an arrow. Little glimpse of hope.
She got hit by an arrow.
It would give Arondir a reason to do something. It would give him motivation. It would give Theo some motivation. There would be something there, but they're not willing to take the risk that they need to. When you think of the Fellowship of the Ring, beginning of Two Towers, Boromir dies, right? When I read that, the suddenness of that happening, I teared up and almost cried. I'm not a crier, but reading that book in 7th grade, I think it was, I almost cried when Boromir died, and I reread that, like, those couple pages like 3 or 4 times, just because I'm like, this can't be happening. This is not happening right now, is it? But it raised the stakes of the whole story when one of your main characters kicks the bucket right there, right, and dies in a, you know, as a pincushion for arrows. Here again, they don't have the guts to do that, but they do have the guts to use the trope of throwing gunpowder on her wound, some magic, I don't know, seed gunpowder. I'm not even sure what that was. It's like, look, this burns stronger. And then, of course, she does the whole thing. She lays there flat and goes, she survives. It's sad. And then Adar comes in, and then he says, I'm going to kill everybody. Give it to me or I'm going to kill everybody. And he's like, no. Why does Adar even say that? Why does he just start mowing them down and say, I'm going to take it until I find it. Like, I'll eventually get it. You don't have to worry about that.
Okay. Yeah. And so yeah, so there was one thing I liked about that scene. The scene with her and the arrow was so silly. It's the drama. Like, everyone's like, it's so painful for Arondir and Theo to save her life by pulling an arrow out. And then there was the moment when they pulled the arrow out and there's this big gasp from the crowd. Like, it pans to the crowd and everyone's like, ooh, that hurt.
Really? I didn't.
Like, this is a spectator sport now. And I mean, you're in the middle of war and someone got shot with an arrow and you're pulling an arrow out. I mean, I know it's painful, but this is not, we're clearly all supposed to be in hearts aflutter because it's Bronwyn that's hurt and maybe she's dead. Now, again, I would like to point out, just because, you know, I like beating dead horses apparently, that this battle happened after dusk fell. So dusk fell, it became night, and then the orcs walked up. And the battle's been going on nearly continuously. There wasn't a great point where there was all time to do anything. It's actually been 20 minutes of screen time, and the sun is rising again. So there wasn't even a spot where you could say, oh, everything, you know, there was this big lag, and it could have been hours
they were
passing.
In the taverns. Yeah.
It was just now it's here. They were in the tavern for like 5 minutes, and so now the sun's rising, but the sun's just rising where there's horses. Back at the ranch where the horses are about to be in 30 seconds,
wait a minute.
It's still totally dark.
Wait, does the sun rise in the east and set in the west?
Oh, wait a minute. The sun is rising in the west in this case.
I just realized that
right. Oh, good point. Yes, because they're riding east across the gap, and the sun's rising behind them, which means the sun's rising in the west. That's perfect.
They can't even get the entire universe right. So
like you said, Adar comes in, and the one point I thought was good was Adar is very happy. Like, he just has people casually slaughtered.
Yeah, that was good.
That's right.
They're the people we don't care about.
And Arondir, we don't care. But Arondir, but I mean, to be fair, Jonathan, I don't care about anybody in this show. So Arondir then won't give him the key, even though he's about to kill everyone, including Bronwyn. And that moment was, I actually went, that shows actually the strength of the will of the elves. Like, to Arondir, who has the elvish look ahead to ages, not just in the moment, he's even willing to have everyone, including himself, die so that they don't get the device that will cause darkness for this part of Middle Earth.
All right, that's a good point.
That's actually believable, and so Theo gives it up instead. So Theo
giving it up is believable too, because he's his son, and that's the mother.
That's fine.
And that's believable, and I had no problem with that. I just the whole they were gonna anyway. So yeah,
and now it's dawn.
Now it's dawn. And first of all, let's go. If we go back to the horses, I took some time in my when I did my Insta review last night or the other night, and I counted the number of horses just in one shot, just to know like how many horses did they have to bring over. I counted at least 165, I think it was. But then it panned over and more, and there were more. So there were probably about 200 horses that they brought over on 3 boats, because they did not have any outposts in Middle Earth at this point, Numenor. So you can't say they got them from somewhere else. Yeah, so I counted. I literally went through and I was like, oh man. And there are over probably close to 200 horses. So we have to believe those 3 ships carried those at least 200 people and 200 horses, which I find eminently unbelievable. So, I've been
here they are
on that for too long.
Okay,
So,
no,
horses.
I mean, so they have a few hundred horses, totally unrealistically. They're riding at dawn. They have broken their own thing. It's been one day, and they've done 2 days worth of travel.
Right.
And one thing that's interesting to me is that they are like they're on like a fast pace here. Like they're like charging.
Well, they're galloping.
They're galloping like the whole way from where they get off the boat. Like, why are they galloping at this point? They don't see the battle. They don't see anybody.
You'll kill your horses.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There's no point to getting where they need to go. There's no urgency.
My daughter rides horses. You gallop your horse for longer than a couple of hours, or even an hour or two. They can't do it. So they're galloping. And why are they galloping? They don't know anything about what's happening. There's no reason.
They just got off the boat. Yeah, they don't know.
They're excited.
Okay. But so anyway.
Yeah. And so they come in and we get our favorite scene from the trailer, which is the chain clothesline, which again, I'm like, it's like Sam with rope, right? Anytime you go into a battle, you carry your chains with you and you make sure that you can use it to mow down the opponents that are standing in. The whole idea that they have this chain, somebody had a great idea and they're like, we got to get this into the show. This is going to be so cool.
Probably the same person that designed the armor.
Again, it's their contempt for the audience that they think their audience is stupid and won't think about these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And most people don't. But the problem is, even though you don't think about it, there's a, it's like there's a flea in the back of your head. It's like itching. And you're like, something's not right about the show. And if you have enough of those, you can't stop the itch. And you're going to eventually like realize this show sucks. So, the chain is just a small part of that. So they come in, they defeat. Hey, look.
Oh, wait. I want to show the one, like, apparently orcs' necks are made of cotton because of this. Watch. She stays. Okay. So she's hanging off the side and her arm is already out, extended, and she does like a flick of the wrist and it like slices through the orc's clothing and head and pops. I mean, it's all obviously there just to show us how cool Galadriel is hanging off of a horse.
She can't do anything normal. Like we haven't seen her fight with any sort of like as a normal warrior would. Everything has to be over the top and physically impossible.
Exactly. And what if Lord of the Rings taught us anything, Legolas aside, because they were making a point with Legolas, which a lot of people had problems with back at the time. But Legolas aside, what Lord of the Rings started and to bring in another show, Game of Thrones, proved is that what's really actually interesting with battle scenes is if you make them as realistic as possible. If people fight realistically, if their armor's realistic, if the way that it works as far as medieval combat goes and then people get into it. This is just sort of casual candy. This is like candy corn.
This scene had
battles.
It had that one shot of, and I love that we paused, I don't know, the head of the orc falling down. That's just really funny. It had the scene of where Theo asks Arondir, he's like, who's that? And he's like, that is Galadriel, commander of the Northern armies. And they have this awestruck look, both of them.
Yes.
And that's exactly how the writers think we think of Galadriel. Like,
it's true.
For some reason, we are supposed to believe that she is amazing because she can lean off the side of her horse. And that's all that Theo needs. That's it. And he's like, who is she?
And they're pausing in the middle of a battle to do this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good point.
They're just stopping and staring for like 10 seconds while like people are dying and chopping heads off and like they just stop. Like
what just happens? They go after.
She calls him soldier, and then she rides off because
she has to go find Adar. He points out Adar,
right?
And she follows him, and like you said, another callback to Peter Jackson's film when she leans down and touches her horse and says, "What is it, Neuralim?" Is that right?
Well, she's riding and she says Noralim, which means faster in Elvish.
Right, same exact thing that Arwen did to Asphaleth in Fellowship of the Ring.
And it's a role reversal where she's the Nazgul and Adar is Arwen and Frodo, because she's pursuing them through a forest. And the fast cuts of like the horses whipping by branches and such. But so it's a direct callback, one of the six, 7, or 8 callbacks that I was mentioning, directly copying Lord of the Rings. Funnily enough, as I mentioned in that scene, she is the Nazgul, and it turns out it's not just me that thinks that. Adar thinks that she's kind of a Nazgul too.
Yeah. We'll come back later.
I mean, he doesn't say Nazgul.
No, I know. And Halbrand chases after her as well. And Dan pointed this out to me, that Galadriel is chasing Adar, right? And Halbrand is chasing Galadriel, and then somehow Halbrand comes from the other side, and they somehow he made the motion and took him from the side. Why he was behind them the whole time, and suddenly he's in front of them. At least he went for the horse's legs, which is the right thing to do in a battle like this.
So
no one else does. But,
and they took the time to show us. That, don't worry, no horses were hurt.
Oh, I know.
It gets up and walks. Oh my gosh, you people are so transparent. It's so dumb.
Yeah. The horse is okay. Don't worry.
But that's not my favorite part about this scene. My favorite part about this scene is from the moment that he trips her. I did the count for the moment he trips the horse, rather, and the horse goes down and Adar goes down. Galadriel is immediately behind him. Watch. I'm going to pause right. Okay, so here he is. And he trips Adar's horse. Okay, so there's Galadriel, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just passing by Adar's fallen horse. There's Adar going off the horse.
Yes.
Okay. 53 seconds go by, almost a full minute. Galadriel winks out of existence because we have a long and drawn out discussion between Adar crawling across the ground and Halbrand coming up on him and stabbing him in the flesh and having a conversation with him and then about to kill him. And then when he's about to kill him, all of a sudden Galadriel pulls up. So apparently she winks out of existence for 53 seconds. That is a long time, by the way, in an action scene.
I noticed the same thing.
And then all of a sudden she winks back into existence. No, don't. And she uses the same line.
We need him.
Yeah, we need him. And later on, she uses the line about salt water.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So they get him.
So there she goes.
That was the line of this movie. It's like you can't satisfy your thirst by drinking salt water or something.
And I was like, is that a line I've missed somewhere, that
Yes.
blood, because blood is salty and salt water is salty, that we're supposed to immediately make that sort of a recognition between the analogy and what I didn't.
I just like how that works. Like I'm about to murder this guy, but you're like, you know what? You make a good point about salt water. Okay, maybe I won't.
Oh, geez.
All right. So there we go. And then, so he doesn't kill. This was the funniest line. This is the funniest line in this one. Okay, we got to listen to this. Here we go.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, it's just between the two soldiers, Isildur.
So what do you think?
So what do you think? Okay, he says, so what do you think? So what do you think? Like, so they've they've sailed across the sea. They've reached Middle Earth. It's like, we're here finally, and we've run to the rescue. And we've had our battle, and here we are with this village and the Middle Earthers that we're here to save. And what do you think? And his answer?
I like the mountains.
I was like, yep. I am that guy on the right there. I like the mountain. I like the mountains. Exactly.
You know what? And this shot is also great for is examining their armor. They're really awkward armor.
Yes.
The top half, the
Moob Armor.
Yeah. What? How did that? They took Aquaman's armor, they turned it white, they made it look worse, and they added man boobs on it.
Yep. And don't forget, everyone underneath all the moobs is silkscreen printed fish scale on cotton T-shirts between the and we see it really clearly with Muriel when she comes up. They give us
This looks so bad. It's so it doesn't look like armor. They look like minorly bad superheroes to me.
Right. I mean, it looks like a B movie, superhero B movie.
It does. B movie. Thank you.
And then I'm gonna pause it again with Muriel because it's so obvious that it's just a fish scale print on a T-shirt that she's wearing underneath her armor.
Do you mean by Muriel the powerful moment when we have her,
the
leader of
yes.
the great civilization after this, and then the leader of the great civilization of Tir Harad coming together.
right. Yeah, when she gives great, and the hilarious part is, here it is. Okay, look at this armor. Look at this.
They're alive because of you.
Okay.
Oh, you can see it bending.
It's as you play through this scene, you can see that it's a cotton T-shirt with a fish scale print on it. It is obvious. They don't even try to hide it.
I never sought to take up.
Oh gosh, it's so
it's because the armors for this film are like, you know what they did for the original Lord of the Rings films with Peter Jackson is they actually created chainmail. Yep. They had some guy go in there and actually tie the chainmail and create link by link each piece of chainmail, and they were like, let's not do that, guys. That is not going to happen. I know your budget is 3 times what that was for all 3 of those films. Can I have this thing called silk screening? Can we do that instead? I hear it looks pretty good.
They spent They spent $750 million on this series. I mean, and with inflation, armors are going up. You never know.
That's right. Yeah, by silk they actually meant real silk too, so they had to get these massive silk screens. I don't know. It's and the scene of her, the 2 of them talking together. It's like that scene in Avengers where they get all the female superheroes together, and they felt like they just had to show it. It's a completely unnecessary scene. It doesn't do anything. The whole point of this, I guess, is to get Halbrand in there, but they could have done that just by saying, "Hey, look, are you going to be the king? I'm going to be the king." Yeah. They're flailing around trying to what is it called? Is it the Bechdel test? Does that sound right? Where you have to get enough, have enough female representation in the time in a movie, and them interacting with each other rather than interacting with men. And so this here helps them meet that scale of what they have to have in a show. Is like, got to get the females working together. So she's like, "Hey, thanks for saving your people, even though you didn't want to last episode." Yeah. Well, let's go back to
but let's go back to the most interesting discussion in this episode.
This is where Galadriel threatens to torture and murder all the orcs, which, I mean, I'm totally fine with. Just the way that she goes about doing it is kind of unbelievable.
So it starts with him not responding to her, and then she threatens the orcs, and then he starts telling her everything, or at least a version.
You mean everything that Tolkien wrote about Sauron in the second age?
Yeah,
because Sauron was bringing life back to Middle Earth after Morgoth died. That's exactly what he did.
Well, and I didn't have so much of a problem with that, Jonathan, because he's clearly telling it from it's the whole idea of, like, again, we have to remember this is a Dungeons and Dragons episode. Everything here is Dungeons and Dragons. It's not real Tolkien. So what he's saying is, like, we're lawful evil. Sauron's lawful evil. He brings order to the world, and that's the most. He unites everything with this one single order. And sure, it might be built on the back of murder and depredation, but it's order, and so. That's what I took out of it, where he's just giving it from their perspective, is like Sauron's doing this uniting thing. But then totally apropos of nothing, he goes on to talk about how Sauron's trying to figure out something about bringing its lands together with perfect order. He sought to craft the power of the unseen world. I don't they come know up what with that means.
No, I know. And this whole line of him, and then he talks about how Sauron went north again with some orcs, and so many died along the way. And he was trying to create a power not of the flesh, but over flesh, which I think, now thinking about it, means that he was trying to craft a power where he could create a flesh for himself, a new look or something like that, right? That's probably what he's getting.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right.
But what is this power? And then I think there's like this shot of what looks like a Balrog head, right? Because you can kind of see in a statue in Angband or Thangorn, wherever that is, whatever the northern fortress. Somewhere in here. There's right there. That's it. It has the curled horns along the left and the right. If you move your mouse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like they talk about a secret power, the power that he was trying to get to. I have no idea what power he's talking about. It's completely made up. This whole thing that is completely made up. I mean, it takes away Sauron's capabilities, because we learn that Adar slew Sauron and his spirit escaped. That's how he died. It didn't happen that he was defeated by the elves ever. Apparently, he was stabbed in the back.
Right, and so since we know that Halbrand is Sauron, there's this funny moment where when Halbrand first unhorses Adar,
right.
he says, "Do you know me?" And he says he doesn't. And so the way I read that was Halbrand is Sauron, so he reformed his body after being murdered by Adar. And he's kind of surprised that Adar doesn't recognize him, or he's probably pleased by it because it means that his form is new enough that nobody can recognize him. But yeah, so I mean, here we're supposed to think that maybe Adar's not telling the truth because Galadriel immediately says she doesn't believe him about him killing Sauron. But Adar's the good one here. Because Galadriel makes gives us a villain speech at the end of this. It's really, really kind of cool.
She's like, I'm gonna commit genocide against your whole people. Like, I'm just gonna wipe all of you out and torture you horribly. Like, it's like really crazy.
Your kind was a mistake, made in mockery. And even if it takes me all of this age, I vow to eradicate every last one of you.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's going to eradicate every last one of you, to which he says, "It would seem I'm not the only elf who's been transformed by darkness." To which I said, "Yup."
Yep. I guess Gil-galad was right. Galadriel is the evil.
Mm-hmm. Maybe
Galadriel is Sauron.
that would be taking a step forward for this show. Really, if they're really leaning into the changes that they could make in Middle Earth. What I thought is, like, they revealed who Adar is. Great. They've told us essentially what happened to Sauron, which is completely different than what happens in Lord of the Rings. So this is what happens, though, when you compress the timelines, right? When you have to come up with new and interesting ways to make things, new ways. They're new ways. They're just telling us again everything that happened. They can't show us because they're compressing everything together, so they can never show us what even happened to Adar. They don't even show us in a flashback what happened to him. They simply have him tell us, and then have some half-assed shots of where they were before to show us, like, oh, look, yeah, that's where they were. That's what he's talking about, and that's it. It's an empty kind of way of telling us who this guy is and his relationship with Sauron. Like, they could have done a lot more in the relationship when they actually had them talking to each other. But they're so bent on not revealing that Halbrand is Sauron that I think at this point, if you don't believe Halbrand is Sauron, then you're completely missing the story. Like, it's really easy to tell that's exactly where they're going at this point.
Yeah, and especially,
you don't think he becomes like the head ring wraith or something? You think he has to go Sauron?
No, it's making too much of, like, when he asks Adar if Adar remembers him.
Yeah.
And then it's making too, and then Adar at the end of this scene that we're watching right now, Adar says, "Who are you?" as he's walking away. It's too on the nose. Yeah. And we know of course sorry.
But we know he's the king of the Southlands. That's who he is. The king that they've been building up for these people who have been longing for the king that has been gone for many years.
Right.
We find him. Yeah. So the whole thing with the king, I don't know. It's so forgettable, and there's been no lead up to it. I don't know where to go. They have this sexual tension discussion here.
Yeah, they have this scene where they've never been more alive than when they're with each other, and she feels it too. So they're love interest, which I mean, in a certain sense, is kind of hilarious given how evil Galadriel is. So since this is evil Galadriel, the fact that there might be some sexual tension, romantic feelings between her and Sauron is actually kind of appropriate, I guess.
Yeah.
Evil, the most powerful elf in Middle Earth at the time of the Lord of the Rings is Galadriel. Yeah. And so the fact that if you have an evil version of Galadriel, she might, have a relationship with Sauron, could be.
I feel like this is like the Jedi.
That's right.
In Attack of the Clones, or is it Revenge of the Sith? I can't. They blend together now. Where the Sith were under their nose the whole time. They didn't recognize it because of their pride. Well, I guess that's the exact story they're telling here. Sauron's been under her nose the entire time, and because of her pride, because she was hunting in the wrong places, and that she just couldn't see, what was right in front of her nose. That's the story we're going to take. We're going to take it from there.
Why not?
And of course, adding in the romantic tension. They're going to make it like, I turned him back into Sauron. He was so close to becoming good again, and something she's going to do is going to turn him back into Sauron by episode 8 or whatever. So anyway, yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't at this point in Tolkien's timeline, not the show's timeline, but in Tolkien's timeline, isn't she married already?
Yes.
So that's like the first stage. She's married to Celeborn.
Yep, and by this point, they probably have Celebrian, I think, as well. Their one daughter.
All right, so
Evil.
let's move on from Galadriel, our least favorite character of all, and move into and past this girl power moment because it's unnecessary. But here we go. All right, the final scene where where in order to make sure that Theo gets over his emotional distress of wanting the sword, he gives him the sword.
Okay, now I want everyone to look at this. Yeah.
But first of all, like before we get into like what the sword looks like, it's like, I know you've been dealing with the struggle. This would be like Gandalf giving the Palantir back to the hobbits and saying, like, you know what? I know you've been dealing with this issue. Here, let me give it back to you so you can overcome it. It's like, the way that you overcome this fact that you feel so powerful and tempted is I'm just going to give it to you, and you just deal with it. Right?
Okay?
Right. And
it's like, hey, son, I know you're struggling with internet pornography. Here is here's a laptop computer,
right,
and a subscription to Pornhub. Yeah, that's right. We're going to do it,
and you have to turn it off. You have to.
He's not the most clear thinking elf, because also we noticed, and you were just going to say this, Michael, when we look at this wrapped up. Wrapping. Right. What does it look like to you?
Look at the length of it. And it clearly is not a sword hilt. We know the size of the sword hilt. It is a good 50% larger than the sword hilt was. And Arondir, who's got these super senses, and he's just better than everyone else because he's less likable Legolas. He's been holding this, and he hasn't figured out it isn't a short hilt. In fact, we have to see what it actually looks like.
He unwraps it.
Like, you can clearly see the axe head on it. Like,
okay,
it sticks out about 6 inches.
How on earth does this wrapped up axe feel in any way, shape, or form like a sword hilt?
I think maybe what they could have done is gotten a sword hilt from another sword and wrapped it up. That could have been something that they could have. There weren't any soldiers nearby. That I'm sure the guy who somehow. So right after this, right, we get to the tavern man, the owner of the tavern, I believe. How did this dude, who is incapable of doing anything right so far, he chose the wrong side. He killed his friend.
Yeah. He's gone from that to Adar's employee of the year. He's working overtime, and he's pickpocketing on scenes we don't even have. And
apparently it is a key. I was wrong. It's a key. He didn't know to what.
Literally a key
right there.
I mean,
stick it in there.
Okay. So bear with me for a second.
Again,
let me ask something. Who is supposed to have built this tower?
The elves.
See, that's what I thought originally. If the elves built this tower with this key here, they built the key. Like, it's part of the structure of the tower.
Because water is supposed to put out fire. I'm trying to think of something.
Wait. So you're telling me that the plot line is that the elves built a key that a Nazgul blade opens a sluice and then destroys their whole structure.
So let's think about this. So we learn a couple things.
Everything about this scene is bad.
The channels that they were digging were not to find the key. Apparently, they were to channel the water into a big tunnel to Orodruin. Right. So there's that. Okay, so they did that. Perhaps they dug those channels so that the elves put the reservoir there, so that if the evil men were continuing to be evil, they could just drown out their entire lands. Maybe that was the point. Or they wanted their plumbing to go bad, and they had a big like some sort of bad sewage issue in the town of Tir-Harad. But it leads to, right? So anyway, all the unbelievable stuff there leads to the next unbelievable thing, which is water. A small lake causes a mountainous eruption that is only it's the strength, right? You have to believe. So we have to believe, like, an eruption like this goes 30,000 feet into the air, right? So steam is causing somehow this eruption that causes the entire mountain to explode. It's sort of like I don't know. It's like baking soda and vinegar, right? This is the baking soda is what's being poured into, and they've got the vinegar of that. And so they've got Insta-Mordor now. They've got they couldn't spend it over 1,000 years like you would in the books. They have to make it instant. And this is what they came up with.
Okay, so what your theory is, Jonathan, is that the people that designed the key, well, it sounds like these people were evil because
this is the problem. We think too hard about this stuff. It doesn't make any sense because the very next scene, right? So the mountain explodes. That's like literally the mountain explodes. It's not like it's just simmering out the top. It's the entire mountain is sloughing off its side, right? The pyroclastic flow of the mountain is hot. Like the way I put it is, you got to think of what happened to Pompeii.
Yep.
In Pompeii, the ash was so hot that they were incinerated, right? Kind of like a nuclear bomb. And for those that weren't right in front, right, they were essentially encrusted in it, but their bodies inside got completely incinerated after that, right? So that's where we get those casts of bodies in Pompeii. However, Galadriel stands right in front of this massive hot ash and fire.
By the way, they're all dead. Like in any kind of reality that you're going to build, everyone's dead. Even if you're going to say Galadriel's an elf, so she can somehow.
Look, it is fire coming at her. They're not shy about it. It is fire coming at her, and yet somehow, if you play it right here, go ahead and play.
They're all dead. Everyone's dead. This is death everywhere. Okay, anything that touches, dead. So she's dead.
That's like the it's like the end of the Deep Impact, the movie where they're standing the giant wave coming forward and everybody's dying, right? You have to be dead. You have to be dead. There's no other way around it. So anyway,
wow. I didn't know that's how Galadriel died.
Well, of course,
she never made it back
because we've seen the her covered in ash from the promo shots. Wow. So this is clearly going to be the next.
What a powerful show!
So it's over, right?
Oh man!
Please get me over.
It's like what's funny is that after all this, it's still the best episode because it's at least the most cohesive.
Right.
But it's cohesive, kind of like I don't know, popsicle sticks and tape. You can pull it apart at the slightest motion, at the slightest wind, at the slightest pull. It drives, every little bit doesn't make sense at every point, at every plot point from the very beginning when they go to the tower to the very end when Galadriel is being consumed by ashes and fire and smoke and char. It mentally doesn't make sense. Logically, you just can't reconcile it in your brain that this would actually happen. So I don't know. Is it worse than the last episode? They're all just bad. I don't know. I can't.
Before this episode, did they even set up that there's a dam there and there's a body of water? Okay, because in my mind, like, what do you even need the key for? Why don't you just go and attack the dam and try to destroy it? Like, don't they just need the water out of there, right?
Yeah.
So like, why does it need like a magic key to unlock it?
It doesn't.
Yeah. So
no key needed. And physics doesn't work that way with water. And whoever designed it, so how'd the water get to the top of the volcano? Or are we supposed to believe it just pours into the bottom of the volcano and then the top, then the whole mountain explodes?
It's getting more and more ridiculous every step of the way. Because they have no choice. They have to compress the 2,000 years into a short amount of time. And this is
not only
make
Galadriel
Mordor.
being dead. I mean, Galadriel's not going to die, of course, but
no.
all of the horses and Numenorians and villagers are dead. Nobody had any time to run away. That was actually 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Nobody has time to escape. Everything is dead. Everything is laid waste. Adar is dead. Halbrand is dead.
Everybody should be dead.
Yep.
I still can't get over how the orcs built all of these tunnels and trenches to bring the water all the way back to the mountain without anybody knowing what was up.
Yeah, because we're shown in this episode that those trenches would have had to have gone from right near the tower where the elves all were straight to the volcano. So they had to have
this plan. They had to have this plan for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Since that, it's unless
I mean, one of the plot points I bet you Jonathan is going to be like, Sauron has this as his fallback plan. Like, here's something he put in place to retreat to in the event that everything went south, literally. So, sorry. So this is, I mean, that's going to be something like the excuse, but I mean, there's so many problems with that. And Sauron knows what's about to happen. Like, Halbrand knows. So he just destroyed his third body. I don't, like, of course he's not going to. We know that he's going to live, but there's no reason that he should live. Yeah. There's no reason that anything.
Everybody's going to survive
in the last 60, 90 seconds happen. All the main characters are going to be alive still.
Yeah. Nobody's I'm just thinking right now that this whole show started because Galadriel had the sign on her brother's shoulder that this is Sauron's plan. Everyone fall back to here. But now we find out that Adar, who is unrelated to Sauron, is doing this whole other thing. It doesn't. No part of this makes sense.
You're right.
And Adar supposedly killed Sauron.
Right.
Yeah.
But at least Sauron went away somehow, and then Adar has come south to give the orcs a home by using a fallback plan of Sauron's, maybe. And Sauron knows this now that Sauron showed up as Halbrand.
Well, he knew that he would find Galadriel on the ocean, so it's not that hard to imagine that he would be able to figure out where.
I can't with this show anymore.
Oh man, I am so sad.
I'm really looking forward to, and this was the best episode. I'm really looking forward to our podcast about the Silmarillion.
I know
that's what this show has done for me. Maybe appreciate.
It's washing your mouth out with soap in all positivity, right? It's like you're getting rid of all the grime that's been building up by taking the shades off your eyes and actually going back to what was written.
Yeah, the book, other way. So, book there. That's the one. That's when we do in our other podcast, people. Yeah. If you're tired of the suck, come listen to us talk about something real.
Yes. Go to windowonthewest.com. So what did you guys think? Did you think it was the best episode? The least worst episode so far?
The least worst, yeah, that's right. That's right.
I think so, but that's just, I mean, like I said, I think that's just due to the fact that it followed one storyline and we didn't have to worry about the Harfeet at all. And we didn't have to worry about Gil-galad or Elrond or Celebrimbor, the horrible characters.
There's definitely two tiers of episodes, with the dirty little sociopaths and those without. And of those without, this is the better episode.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
I did notice that Amazon.com, they let the star rating go down a little bit on the show.
Oh.
It's now 3 stars.
Oh.
With 18,000 reviews. So,
did you guys submit a review?
I've submitted 2, and so far I've only heard back on the first one that they've rejected it. It goes against their community standards. So I submitted a second one, and it hasn't gone up yet. So
totally fine.
Yeah, I tried twice as well, got rejected both times, and I was very careful. I did not include anything about anything political. I did not criticize anything having to do with any of the wokeness, the diversity.
Yeah,
stuff.
Me too. Mine was very
with the writing of the show, like the poor quality of the writing and costumes and things like that.
My tact was more like,
right? Yours is up, Jonathan?
Mine is up. Yeah, mine was. I essentially said, well, I don't know who these writers are, but they're clearly not Tolkien because nothing they've written has come from Tolkien's work.
I've heard that if you write
1 star.
Okay, so that's great because I've heard that if you write a review which tells people what you really think if you don't like the show, but if you give it 2 or 3 stars, that it has more of a chance of getting through.
Yeah, no, I definitely gave it 1 star. There was no way I was going to sacrifice my honor and give it more than 1.
I'm not submitting any more reviews. They've rejected 2 of mine, and so that's it.
Well, hopefully you guys don't give us 1 star on this review. Oh, how about that transition? Good. You can put your comments below. You can subscribe using the subscribe button because no one knows how to use that subscribe button. So everybody has to remind everybody every time there's a video, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. Share, like, and go to theonering.com/patron if you want to offer a little bit more support. We're getting Michael a new microphone.
Which I desperately need.
Well, now that you're settled, we're moving in. So we're improving our systems. You can see we're now using a much better streaming system here now where you can see our names. And so the effect of that echo is gone. We're on the way up, but we thank you for following along with us. We thank you for watching. And we will see you next time as we head into episode 7. Yeah, 7.
Second to, or as I call it, the second to last episode.
The penultimate episode. Woohoo! We're going to make it through. Only 2 more weeks. So we hope you liked it. We hope you subscribe. And we will see you on episode 7.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.